Hi, and welcome to the Data Strategy Gurus podcast. Today, we have Nigel Turner from Global Data Strategy here as a guest with us. Nigel, you consult with customers worldwide on data management and data strategy. You're as well a speaker at the most renewed data conferences, and you're in the committee of DAMA, the Data Management Association in UK. I mean, I've been looking up to you already for a long time as a thought leader. Is there still anything missing or something that you want to share with your audience where they can take benefit from it?
Yeah, sure, Eve. And let me say it's a pleasure to be invited to do this podcast. And thanks for inviting me. I think you've covered most of it. I suppose there are two things that I'm heavily involved in that have changed slightly. One of them is to do with DAMA, and one of the things that I'm sort of proud of with what we did in DAMA UK was we were the first DAMA chapter in the world to introduce a mentoring scheme whereby we got experienced DAMA members to mentor less experienced DAMA mentors. Or it also can work that, say, you spent your life doing BI and you've suddenly been told somebody wants you to do data strategy and you think, wow, how am I going to do that? So what we do is these people come to DAMA UK and say, is anybody out there can give me some advice on how to do a data strategy? Then we have a mentoring scheme. And at the moment, I mentor 4 people within the UK, members of DAMA UK. And we're hoping that's a model that other branches of DAMA will adopt as well. Because I think one of the things that I've always believed in data management is that sometimes there's a disconnect between, shall we say, the trendy young people who work in data management and those of us who are a little older and a little grayer like myself. And yeah, sitting here. Because, we made the mistakes that are being made today 20, 30 years ago. And the same mistakes are being made today. And sometimes I feel with all the focus on things like data science and data analytics, and I think they are very admirable and real positive things about data management. You've also got to get the basics right and the foundations right. And you can't do good data science with poor data quality. You can't do good data security without good data governance, for example. So it's be able to connect the bridge between the two. And having done mentoring, and I'd recommend it to anyone, I've learned an awful lot about analytics and data science. And hopefully the people I mentor have learned a lot about get your data quality right and get your governance right. So it sort of acts as a bridge, I think, between those two things. So that's something certainly that I'm very keen on and very involved in. The other thing, I guess, is, you mentioned there that I do a lot of consulting with customers, which I do. I talk at conferences, but also in the last couple of years, I've noticed there's been a huge demand for training in data management. And I've run several courses, both public courses and anyone can just, wheel up and attend, and in-house courses as well, which are tailored or customized to a particular organization. And the main focus of those courses is data strategy. So companies who say, we want to put a data strategy together. We don't know where to start. Can you provide a course to give us the starting point? So we've done that. And my colleague Donna Burback does a lot of that as well. And also in-house, and also in-house courses. And I've also, when I've got a bit of time, I've got good relationships with my local university in Cardiff. And I sometimes go in and give lectures and tutorials to some of the students studying computer science. Because again, I find, they're great at data science, but you mentioned the word data quality and they look blank. So I sort of fill in some of the gaps there as well. So I suppose, I'd add those things as well.
Well, that's a lot. And I'm quite interested in as well where you say the mentorship, and that's only from the DAMA UK chapter that you're running that, or is it kind of expanding through all the chapters of DAMA?
As far as I know, a number of other DAMA chapters have expressed an interest in our scheme and how we run it. But as far as I'm aware, nobody's implemented it in the way that we have. And at the moment, I think, show you the success of the scheme. We have, I think at the last count, a colleague of mine on the board now runs the scheme, 50 people being mentored and 20 mentors. So it's quite, it's grown to quite big proportions. And as I said, I think all the mentors would tell you it's a learning experience for them just as much as it is for the mentees. And of
Yes,
course,
it's from both ends, if I understand. I mean, being a guru in data management like you, and then the people working more in data science, and that's what we see in artificial intelligence and data science. I've experienced the same thing as you are seeing, where these people, they produce solutions, very good solutions, but they don't think about the foundations because they never came across these kind of problems. So
yeah,
what do you see? Yeah, what do you see in the 25 years you're in the industry of data management? What has changed over the years? You mentioned already data science people not really well paying attention to data management as such.
Mm. I mean, 25 years, what have I seen? Yeah, I mean, when I started, I was a COBOL programmer. And I remember writing COBOL programs by hand on coding sheets and using a strange little machine that would then punch them into punch cards. And we used a piece of high-tech equipment called an elastic band to make sure all the cards didn't fall apart. We sent them off to a computer center to be processed, and we got the results back the next day. Normally, the result in my case, as I wasn't the greatest programmer in the world, was that the first card I punched was incorrect, and so the program wouldn't run. And then you'd have to repunch the card and go back in again. So when you think about that, and probably the mainframe machine that we were all accessing at the time has probably got about the same computing power as the iPhone I've now got in my pocket. So,
Yeah.
I mean, clearly the technology has changed enormously in the last 25 years. Um, but well, what drives me to do this stuff for 25 years? I suppose I've got an inherent fascination with data, as I'm sure we all have in the data management
Mhm.
space. And I'd like to say, that this was a deliberate career choice, but it wasn't actually. I ended up by accident when I worked for British Telecommunications BT, reporting into a data strategy director, a business strategy director. And she'd been hearing lots of complaints from people about the state of the data in the company. And one day I had the misfortune or the fortune to walk into her office and she said, "Oh, I'm looking for somebody to do something for me. Can you help me? We've got seem to have got data problems, never really talked about in BT before. Would you be prepared to go out and do some investigations?" And that was back in something like 1990. And then from the
Yeah.
point, as soon as I started looking into data and data quality and things, I thought, well, this is really interesting. This is a field that I really can get into. And I've sort of stayed in it ever since. And I guess the other thing as well, since I left BT back in at the beginning, by 2010. So the last 12 years or so, I've been working as a consultant in companies like Global Data Strategy. And I think what I find fascinating about it now is that, when you look across many different industries in many different parts of the world, it's a sort of, I would say that 80% of the problems that those organizations share are actually common, regardless of the business they're in, whether in a
Yeah.
university or a pharma company or a bank or a manufacturing company. The same old problems keep coming up. We can't get our senior managers to buy into data. The data quality of our core data isn't fit for purpose. Nobody in the business takes responsibility for driving data improvement forward, and everybody blames the IT department for all the data problems that we've got. And those were problems that I first came across doing this stuff, 20 years ago. That's still the same. None of that has really changed. So I suppose what I'm saying to answer your question was, the 25 years or so,
Yeah.
it's the technology has changed, obviously, beyond all recognition exponentially, but some of the problems haven't. And they just restated in a slightly different form, I think. And it's still the old thing about data does not equal technology. Data equals technology plus people plus business process. And unless you look at data in that way, you'll never solve all the data problems that organizations have got. And still today, just as I saw 20 years ago, Eve, companies
Yeah.
have a data issue. I know what we'll do. Let's go up buy a tool. And they buy a tool and they try and implement it. And guess what? It doesn't work because they haven't
Exactly.
addressed people and process issues. And we have a well-known phrase in the UK you might be familiar with, which is "a fool with a tool is still a
It's still
fool."
full.
And we come across that, no disrespect to our clients, but we've seen that time and time again. And they fall for vendor hype, and they buy things without really understanding what they're going to do with them and how they're going to embed those technologies and tools in their existing business processes, and how are they going to make their people data literate enough in order to take advantage of those tools. And
Yeah.
that's an issue that we see all the time.
Yeah, and it's the same I've experienced as well. It's kind of okay, we implemented Power BI or Tableau, and now we have an issue. And what I've learned over the years, doing technical roles as well, where you're doing the technical stuff, and then you see, I need to understand what you want to do with the data and how we need to model it to get to the insights. And
Yeah.
asking that question and getting the real answer of what do you want to try to achieve. Apparently,
Mm.
that's pretty hard to answer for most of the people. It's like what do you want to become when you're growing up, or what do you want to do? What do you really like? It's a very tough question to get answered by people. So I'm quite
Yes.
curious in the data strategy what you're doing. You mentioned people, process, and technology, and the data.
Mm.
What are the first steps a company can take to overcome that and not really looking at, still keep on looking at the tools, but trying to refine the business requirements to drive the business and really become data driven, as they call it, which is such a nice slogan.
Yeah, well, I think at the moment, I mean, in many organizations, you still see a bit of a chasm between the technical IT data people and the business people who are the users of the data and the owners of the data, of course. Very often they don't realize they're the owners. And it's about bridging that chasm. So how do you make these two sets of people who can often be warring tribes in some organizations actually begin to talk to each other and collaborate? And, the way we always find out, what I think distinguishes us in global data strategy, and it's one of the reasons that Donna Burbank and I set the company up, is that we didn't think a lot of the traditional data management consultancies focused
Mhm.
enough on bridging that gap. So they would talk to the IT team and they would say, "We need master data management. That's great. Let's pick a tool. Let's implement the tool. Let's put a tool in place." The business didn't really understand the value of it. The business then wouldn't commit to owning the data within the MDM. They wouldn't own to the business owner. They wouldn't admit to owning the business rules and to owning the data quality rules, for example, that you need to build into a successful MDM platform. And so the platform then underperforms and doesn't do what was hoped to do. So it's all about bridging those two things. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing in global data strategy, whether we're building a data strategy or building a data governance implementation strategy for an organization, is you must start with understanding the business and what the organization is trying to achieve in business, purely in business terms. What is it doing today? What's its mission, if you like? What's the vision for the organization? How does it rely on data today? And how will that reliance on data change if they achieve their aspirational goals of being a different sort of company? And then once you start to make that connection, you can then start to align, if you like, what is happening on data management with what is happening in terms of corporate objectives and corporate strategy. And one of my favorite questions when I speak at conferences is I talk to a load of data management people saying data governance, and I'd say, okay, put your hand in the air because in America they love that, don't they? Put your hand in the air. And I said, right, put your hand in the air if you can tell me what the three key strategic goals of your organization are. And I would say on average, when I've asked that question, about of 100 people in a room, 3 people might be brave enough to put their hands up. And then I say, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you what they are, but I think it proves the point that if you want to be successful in data management, particularly when it comes to things like data strategy, if you don't understand your business and what your business is trying to achieve, then your chances of success are zilch, zero, nil. There's no chance you will make that connection. So you've got to bridge that gap by saying, here's a business. This is what the business is trying to do. Current and future data needs. What's
Yeah.
the current state of the provision of data to meet those needs? Where those needs don't meet today's business needs, you have to take some action to put that right. And also then when the business is trying to go in the future, these are the new things that you need to think about in data. So a classic case would be, if the data isn't good enough today, you need to do some data quality improvement work. You need to
Yeah.
implement data owners and data stewards to drive that improvement. And then it might also be the future, though. You're right. You're a B2B company. You want to sell B2C in the next 5 years. What does that mean for data and data management? What new data do you need? How do you need to govern and manage it? How are you going to decide, how to acquire or ingest that data? Is it external and internal sources? And that's where the data strategy should focus on. So when you talk about an overall data strategy, when we put a data strategy together for an organization, it's partly fix the problems of today to make your business work better today. That will then give you a sounder foundation to realize some of the business opportunities that you say you want to achieve in the future. And then you can build new data capabilities on top of that. I often use the example in presentations, Eve, of I'm sure you're familiar with the Parthenon, the great
Yeah.
hill in Athens. I've been lucky enough to present at a couple of conferences,
Wow.
and it's a great city to present in. And the Parthenon is a hill in the
Mhm.
center of Athens, and of course, it's famous Sorry, the Acropolis is the hill. I got that wrong. The Acropolis is the hill, and the Parthenon is the great temple that sits above it. Let's get this right. Sorry, it's been a long week. And one of the things that
Semantics.
when I started studying the Parthenon, and because I thought, well, I'm in Athens. First time I went there, top of my list, I must get up the Acropolis to see the Parthenon. And I did, and it was wonderful. And I looked into how the Greeks built it. And what they did was they spent a long time, first of all, fixing the Acropolis, because the Acropolis is a sort of quite a high, steep outcrop of rock. The top of it was sort of very crumbly and rocky and bouldery and all things like that. So they spent an enormous amount of time flattening it out and making a solid foundation and a solid base. Once they got that base in place, and their brilliant architects could then create this incredible temple on top of the mountain. And it's still been there for what, 2,500 years now? Despite the best attempts of countries like Britain and France and others to tear it down, it's still there. And it's the same with data that, the first thing you do if you're trying to create something which will endure and last is to get the foundation right, build a solid foundation, good data governance, good data quality, good metadata management, all these things in place. Then you can build on top of that, and then you create something that doesn't just look great and achieve great results, but you can actually then be sure it's going to endure and last. It's not going to fall down because the foundations are shaky. And that's
Yeah,
an analogy I often use.
yeah, that's a very nice metaphor. But I understand really building the foundations. That's something where I'm looking at most of the time as well. But building those foundations most of the time takes a lot of time before, and you can't really show any tangible value. So that's sometimes the frustration from the business. What are you guys doing? Why is it needed? Just give me the solution, give me the data, give me the pivot table, whatever. How do you tackle that with your strategy to indeed work on the foundations, but at the same time show some value to the business and align with their business strategy so they happy is a exaggerated word as such, but really that you can keep the buy-in from them and they really understand why you need to do that. It's like building your house, and the Acropolis is a real nice example out of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, one of the things that we always put in data strategies are what Donna likes to call quick wins. She's a great lover of quick wins, and quite rightly too. So in any data strategy that we recommend, we don't say, because you're right, it's a suicide note to say we need to spend the next 5 years solidifying our foundation. And then when we've done that, we can then do some of the clever things that you want to do with analytics or with machine learning or AI or whatever. Clearly not. So the way that we always say, right, let's pick a few key areas of your business where we believe that, holistic approach from foundations to building the infrastructure, from the Acropolis to the Parthenon, in other words, can be done relatively quickly. Let's focus all our efforts on doing that. So, getting governance in place, fixing the data quality problems, putting the analytics environment in place, buying or using an analytics tool to do that stuff. You then, in effect, create a mini use case. And that mini use case becomes, if you like, an island of excellence. I'm going to switch to islands now, away from hills. So they become islands of excellence. And then you gradually build overlapping proofs of value or proofs of concept like that. And then eventually, your sea of data indifference suddenly becomes populated with islands of excellence. And then gradually, if you build the islands start to join up. And then you start to sort of build up, a landmass, if you like, that then can make a significant difference to the company. So that's one thing. The other thing we would always say as well, to get all your data foundations right will take forever. So what is the data that is most important to your business? Is it customer data, product data? Is it financial data where they've got issues? Is it HR data? Very much depends on the organization. And therefore, your proofs of concept or your quick wins, as Donna would put them, should be focused on those few key data areas to make a big difference. Because I think data strategies are another good example of, I'm sure you're familiar with the Pareto principle, Eve,
Yep.
where 80% of the value comes from 20% of the effort. And the same is true of data. But if you put 80% of your time and effort in that 20% of your data that really makes your company work or not, then you're going to get a much quicker and much bigger return on investment than you will by trying to fix the whole foundation in one fell swoop. And of course, by building up use cases like that, you then develop, if you like, a methodology an approach and learning that you can then sort of use in other parts of the organization as well. We're doing one at the moment with a motor insurance company in the UK, and we're helping them to run a proof of concept basically in one part of their business. And what we're
Yeah.
doing is, it's basically all about improving data quality and improving BI reporting so that the people who operate that part of the business have better insight and information onto their day-to-day work. So it helps them to prioritize their work, to spot trends. They're very concerned about things like insurance fraud. So basically, the way we approach, do some data modeling, create a business glossary, go from the business glossary to create a data mart in effect. Use Power BI, start to produce some reports, and also at the same time do some data quality monitoring and data quality reporting. And then, and then underpinning all of that, assign owners to the key data in that area and assign data stewards so that the business is driving that change rather than it being driven by IT, which it has been in the past. So that's a good example of that. So, that's that whole POC takes about 3 months to run.
Well,
In that,
that's a reasonable period. What I see most of the time is people pick up bits and pieces from what you should do, build a data model, a business glossary, whatever. But trying to explain them the holistic approach and the complete thing, and that you can do bits and pieces, like you say, per use case, and even show that value. It's sometimes pretty hard to get the people on that level, and they keep on focusing. Yeah, you know what? We need a data model to start, and we only need 1 day a week to get you in to build that model, and they see a lot of objections just to make that work. And you need to return the question all the time of what do you really want to achieve and in which time frame, and getting
yep.
those answers is sometimes pretty hard to my belief to get clients, people think in that way. So how do you tackle the time that you need to, with a bad word, call it educated people and help them on that level to understand what input they need to provide to you to be able to build that strategy together with them?
Yeah, I'm a great fan of. I like. In fact, I did a webinar last night talking about this. I'm a great fan of Larry English, who was one of the
Oh
great
yeah,
founding fathers of the data quality discipline. And Larry was the guy that sort of
TQIM, yeah.
got me into DQ. Yeah, initially into DQIM within PT. And as far as Larry always said, how do you sell these things? You concentrate on what he called the costs of failure. So that one of the things we do, for example, if we're doing a data strategy, we always ask a few key questions. All right. We have a, quite a sophisticated methodology for this, but, we interview lots of people in the business and IT, and we ask them about, what's causing you problems at the moment. We always say, tell me about your data. What do you use data for in your part of the business? What's working well? And you usually get 5 minutes on what's working well. And then you ask the fatal question, what's not working so well? And then you get half an hour of pain that pours out to this individual. And then you start to ask them things like, okay, so, you know, um, how does that impact your business? What's the actual impact of your business? How could your business operate better if you solve some of these data problems that you tell me that you've got? And then we always ask a magic question at the end, which is really important in data strategy. And we say, okay, well, all the problems you've told me about, if we could fix just one of those problems, what would that problem be? And people are remarkably good at doing that. Oh yeah, whatever you do, fix customer addresses. It's a thing. It's the bane of my life. It causes huge inefficiencies, reduces the productivity of my staff, creates a lot of rework and failure activity. If you could fix that one thing, then that would make a difference. So then when you put your strategy together, because it's a bit of an art and a bit of a science, you'd say, we've got to address that guy's concern about addresses. Otherwise, he's never going to come on board with this. So you have to first of all demonstrate you actively are listening to people. You take account of what they say they need, and then you try and create a data strategy, if you like, that embraces what the key stakeholders actually want from it. There's got to be something in it for them all the key stakeholders, and that's why POVs are a good idea, because we can say, well, we would like to do a POV on addresses. We'd like to do a POV on product management, because our product manager told us that, he's got these issues or she's got these issues in this area.
Yeah.
The finance people are saying they get major problems because of this and that. So we'd like to do 3 POCs, one for finance, one's for production, and one maybe for sales and marketing. And then immediately everybody feels like they've got a bit of skin in the game. and they're going to get something out of this. I think the issue
Hmm.
can often be, you go around and interview loads of people, you put your data strategy together and you say, well, thank you for telling us about all your problems with product data, but it's going to be 3.5 years before we can even think about it. That's
Yeah.
going to turn people off straight away and you'll never sell it. And the other thing, when we do that as well, I think the two best words that I've ever learned in data management, Eve, are "so what."
Yeah.
So somebody will say, our address data is really poor. Okay, so what? Oh, that means that, we can't correctly assign the goods that we're sending out to the right physical addresses. Okay, so what? What does that mean? Oh, right, I've got two people in an office back there that spend their time correcting the data. Okay, how much does that cost you? Oh, those two people, I'd much rather use them taking orders than doing that. So those two people, what are their salaries roughly? Okay, 50,000 a year, 50,000 euros a year each. That's 100,000 euros you could save if you fix the data. So
Hmm.
you then can go, when you sell the case, you've got real hard facts and business impacts that you can then say to people, you can ignore this, you can carry on and do it as you are. But at the moment, your address problems are costing you at least 100,000 euros a year, probably more. And if you invested in time and effort in this and a bit of money, perhaps, then those problems would go away and disappear. So, it's relating it back all the time to the current costs of failure. And one of the things, again, I learned from dear old Larry was that, it's much easier to measure a failure cost than it is to assign a positive value to data. So the wrong
Yeah.
question, how much is a good address worth, is a question it's almost impossible to quantify. If you say, how much does a bad address cost us? You've got
Hmm.
a much better chance of fixing that, of getting the buy-in to that. And I'm a great believer in that. The other thing, just to mention as well, one of the most common things we come across when we do data strategies or data governance or anything else is people who say, yeah, this is great. I know we need to do it. The problem is, at the moment we're recovering from COVID. We've got all the problems with the energy crisis. Maybe we look at this next year. We don't have time to look at it this year. We're too busy. And, my standard answer to that is, well, actually, all the problems that we found with data in your area, you are dealing with them now. And that is holding you back and stopping you doing the important things that you need to do. So if you don't invest in data now, those problems are just going to continue. So in other words, you're
Yeah.
doing data governance and data quality management right now. The thing is, you're doing it really badly. And we can help you do it better and more efficiently and give you more time and more energy to focus on what's important to your business. And
Yeah.
that's usually a way of selling it. Yeah, in
Yeah, I
print.
fully understand. And I feel sometimes that companies is more like people to be busy and fixing that problem in the wrong way than really investing it and doing it in a better way and really avoiding the costs. But apparently those discussions don't ever happen or don't happen very much in companies. Now these days we have the chief data officer which came up and more people are being assigned on that role. But I hear a lot of chief data officers are struggling exactly what you've been pointing out, talking
Yeah,
to the CIO, the CIFO, getting the buy-in from them and showing the value of their role, showing the value of the data.
yeah.
Is that something what you're experiencing as well, and could give some advice to these people besides what you already have been telling?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, funny enough, in the many companies we work with, and that since we set up global data strategy in 2015, so
Yeah.
we've been operating now for about 7 years. Like, I don't know how many clients we've had at that time, maybe 30 or 40, perhaps. Only two of them have CDOs. So I think the CDO role seems to me, anyway, it's just a strange quirk of our customer base, isn't that widespread or that popular. Um, and of the two CEOs that we work with, one we thought as being very successful and one wasn't. And the difference between them was the successful one. Their main skills were that they were very good influencers. They were very good at explaining the importance of data management in business terms that people could understand. So they wouldn't say, you hear how often you hear this rubbish, even, we need to
Yeah.
maximize the value of our data assets. It's a totally meaningless statement. It sounds great, but what does it mean? All right. But if you've got a CDO that can go into the C-suite and say, we are not currently making best use of our data. We are wasting a lot of money, missing new revenue opportunities because our data is not fit for purpose. And here's some real examples of that. they're much more likely to be able to sell the importance of their role. And that implies as well to fix those problems. Their number two skill, if you like, is the ability to collaborate with people and to bring people together to work together on fixing these problems. And that sort of implies as well, going back to what I was saying earlier, the successful one knew the business inside out. She knew exactly what the business was trying to do. She was switched on to the business strategy and the business objectives, and she understood that relationship between her role and the role of data in achieving or delivering that strategy or impeding that strategy if they didn't fix their data problems. So she was very good at it, and we were very impressed by the role she was playing. Um,
Yeah.
the other CDO that we worked with, who we thought was rather unsuccessful, was very much focused on policies, on processes and technology. So their basic line was, we need new processes for this and a new process for that. And we need a policy for this and a policy for that, a policy for that. And we need to buy loads of new technology as well to make all this stuff happen. And this person was
Yeah.
not a good influencer, not a good collaborator. And we felt really didn't fully understand the business either. So they were basically techies who have suddenly been given this title of CDO. And the solution to it was, as techies can do, oh, I'm a techie, the solution must be technology.
Yeah.
And, we're going to build some policies as well that, force people to do what I want them to do. And of course, as well as I do, as soon as you say to people, I'm going to force you to work in a certain way. I
It's
won't
not
say what the
gonna
answer.
work.
I would not repeat the answer, but the second word was off. I can tell you that. And when we talk to other people in the business, they say, "Oh, we don't take any notice of that. I mean, there's nothing in it for us. What's the point of that?" So it's all about, I think a good CDO is first and foremost a good salesperson. That somebody who's passionate about data and can
Yeah.
sell data as a vital, critical core discipline in any organization. They're the ones that succeed. And the ones that don't tend to be the more inward looking, technically focused people, I think. And of course, as soon as you get technically focused, you start clashing with the CIO anyway, because then there's always a big turf dispute as to who owns what. I own this data warehouse. No, you don't. I do. And, then you get that sort of nonsense as well. And that internal politics and personalities comes into it. And that's never gonna be a good start for any collaborative data management improvement program.
Yeah, yeah. I followed what you said about data strategy. We discussed as well about business strategy and aligning that. What I see very often is I was always laughing a few years back when I saw the high level data strategy maps, and it felt okay. Now we have a map. We have an idea where to focus upon, but the executionable part was always very hard to get that implemented. Is that the translation between really the business acumen and then executing it on the technical level to make it happen? I see still a disconnect on making data strategies into really creating that value, making that happen, making it in a sustainable way embedded in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things when we say, we produce a data strategy for an organization, we often go in and see existing data strategies because many companies will say, well, we've had a first bash at this, and so the first thing
Yeah.
we say is, yeah, can we see what you've done, And we come across some very common sort of errors in it. First of all, a data strategy won't work if it's owned by the IT department, and we've seen lots of that. This is our data strategy. Yeah, you're in IT. Has the business bought into this? No, not really. This is a strategy for us. Well, it's not right because you're not the right people to run a data strategy. So we have these sort of conversations. The second thing you see as well very often is that a data strategy is no more than a technology shopping list. So we need CRM, we need analytics environment, we need to build a data lake, we need to do this thing, and there's no reference in any of that to the business. Why does the business need a data lake? What purpose is it going to serve? Because it's going to be an expensive thing to create and run. So, we see and the other sort of strategies we see as well are what we call a set of noble principles and aspirations, like the one I just mentioned. We're going to maximize the value of our data assets. We're going to ensure our data is effectively governed end to end to make sure that we are compliant with legal and regulatory requirements. Really boring stuff like that. And that's where it then stays up in the air, up in the cloud somewhere. I rather like a term I commonly use is that when asked what is a strategy, an American, I can't remember who it was though, who said that, well, a strategy is a fancy word for a plan. And basically, when we produce a data strategy, the key deliverable of that data strategy, yeah, we might put some noble aspirations in there, but it's a plan. It's a project plan, a roadmap, as Donna would call it, to deliver the data strategy. And unless you have and of course, a plan, as we all know, all of us who work in project management, a plan means activities, it means deliverables, it means owners, and it means timescales. And if
Yeah.
your data strategy doesn't contain those things, it isn't a data strategy. It's not a plan. In other words, it's just a precursor of a data strategy. And this is why, as part of that plan, as I said earlier, we can say, here's your first proof of concept. You can deliver that the next 3 months. The next proof of concept, you can start 2 months in, deliver that 2 months later. So it's, our data strategies just look like a project plan. And that's what they have to be. And if it's, as you say, if you don't have a project plan, you don't deliver anything. Okay. It just becomes then as, a set of noble aspirations that you never deliver. So it's
Yes,
all very
data.
well saying, data is a valuable asset. But what activities and deliverables are you going to produce in your data strategy to make that statement come true? It's not enough just to say that, say, oh, let's do some good stuff with data that will achieve that aim. And of course, being a plan, you've got to measure everything. So, you measure timescales, you measure, delivery of activities, you set some KPIs for each stage, and you need to think about how you're going to measure success or otherwise in each stage as well. So we're very plan focused, roadmap focused. We love roadmaps.
Sounds really great. You're working as well globally. Do you see a cultural difference in the data strategy approach? You mentioned as well in the
Yeah.
States, or just more European based?
Yeah, yeah, I think obviously, if we've done quite a bit of work recently in the Middle East, and we just won a new contract actually with the Middle Eastern government. Again, it's looking at data strategies and data catalogs, believe it or not, is what we're going to do. I think, excuse me, I think when you go to, how should I put this, less mature parts of the world who aren't quite perhaps as data management savvy as me, maybe in the States or Europe, they tend to hold DAMA as the Bible, the DAMA DMBOK, data management for knowledge, as a bit of a Bible. And they base sort of everything they do on that. And I know DAMA's, being in DAMA, and Donna's a key DAMA member as well. We're great fans of DAMA. And, Donna contributed to the DMBOK. I didn't, but I contributed to the exams, the CDMP exams that DAMA run. And I think we both think that a slight weakness of the current version of DMBOK is it doesn't make that bridge between business and the data side. It sort of starts by sort of an assumption that, there's 11 domains of data expertise, okay, which is metadata management, business intelligence, data warehousing, all good stuff. And we think, DMBOK is excellent. It's right. How do I build a data warehouse? How do I manage my metadata? How do I fix my data quality problems? Really good for that. But what it doesn't tell you is, how do I make all this align with what the business is trying to do? So when we do a data maturity assessment, which we often do as part of a strategy, we'll use basically the 11 DAMA domains, but we've added one, which is simply called strategy. So, what has the business got a strategy? Is that strategy understood? Are the implications for data understood? And all those other things I talked about earlier. And if you don't have that bit, then the chasm can still continue to exist. So, the feedback, I give to people who are responsible for DMBOK is, put some more stuff in about linking what you're doing to the business, because we think that's what people really need to know. Because, when things go wrong with things like data strategies, it's because that connection has been effectively made. And
Yeah, and there was
last example of the unsuccessful CDO I talked about, I got the impression that he didn't really understand the business that well, and really wasn't that interested either. He was much more interested in getting a budget so he could buy some flashy new toys that he would hope to impress people with.
Yeah, Nigel, you answered that question, what was on my mind about the DMBOK, and I had the same feeling. I mean, I had the question coming my way a lot of the times. We have this data issue. Where do we start and how do we start? So I thought, okay, I know something about it. It's DMBOK. Let's have a look. You throw the 11 domains to the people, and they're even more confused. So trying to understand of indeed aligning that to the business strategy. And that's my first question. I most of the time always ask first as well, of what do you really want to achieve? Do you want to increase revenue? Do you want to increase profit, faster time to market? And then you see a lot of people even never thought about that. Is this really our vision, our
Yeah.
mission? What do we want to do?
Yeah, I totally agree. The thing is as well, what can happen, and this happened with a client of ours outside the UK and Europe, is that they had bought DMBOK and they'd studied it very carefully and very assiduously. And they decided if they were going to be good at data management, they needed to do everything that DMBOK said they should do. So all 11 disciplines, all at the same time, and that we've got to be excellent at them all. And of course, what we say in a data strategy is, okay, exactly what you said. What are we trying to achieve as the business? What's important to the business, and what's the important data we need to focus on? Okay, well, if customer data is our number one priority, then maybe we need customer MDM. Maybe it'd be good to build some more new data marts so that we can extract more value from our customer data. But they don't have to be excellent at everything, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean. You don't to do that. You don't have to be brilliant at analytics necessarily initially, because if you don't really have good BI, then forget this clever analytics stuff. Get your BI right first. Get your data
hmm
marts, get your BI built, and then think about analytics. So, in other words, you don't have to be excellent at everything in order to deliver things in the next 3 years. So you focus in on those 11, which of those 11 domains are most important. And of course they connect together. I mean, I'm not
of
suggesting, well,
course. Yeah,
we don't do better data management because that would be stupid, or we don't do data quality, but you do the data quality that you need to support the business objectives that you're trying to deliver. And no more than that. So you might say all our data quality efforts are going to be focused on customer data because that's where the main thrust of the strategy is, and that's the main data to fix. And then we won't worry about all the other data quality problems that we've got everywhere else until the time is right. And it's all about focus and priority. If you try and
yeah,
encompass everything, you're going to fail because you simply will spread your resources too thinly, and then you will end up not delivering anything very well. It's much better to focus on the 5 or 6 key things that really matter, make a difference under Pareto, and put all your efforts and attention on those. And that's what
yeah.
a data strategy
To
should
to be
exactly. Sorry, I was going to say, and that's exactly what, if we do a good data strategy, that's what we'd like to get across. And, if people say, yeah, we get that, we'll concentrate on those 5 key things, then we've succeeded. If they say, no, I don't like this, what about all these other things that we want to do? We want to do them all. And we'll say, you can if you like, but you'll end up doing them all badly. It's better to do a few things well than everything badly.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think doing only the things which you can do right, the quick wins. Think about the Pareto. Look at the cost of bad data management. Trying to sell that. Very good advices. You've been so long in the space, Nigel. Which are some of the people you really look up and inspire you, either in data management or in general way on running a business, running a company?
Well, initially I'd go back again to good old Larry English that I mentioned earlier. I mean, it was Larry English and Tom Redman. I think he's
Oh
called the
yeah.
Data Doctor, Tom, which is his moniker. And they were the first guys I read on data. And and I saw Larry and Tom present. I got to know them in the end, and they're both great guys. And I'm pleased to say Tom is still doing his stuff, and still ticking companies off and not getting their data right. And so they were my first sort of influences. And then, since I met up with Donna Burbank, and I got to say goodwill for Donna, she'll kill me, but no, I mean it sincerely anyway. But one of the reasons I decided to hitch my sail onto Donna's boat when she wanted to set up a new company was that Donna is one of the true polymaths of data management, in the sense that she's a very good data modeler, but she's also good at data governance. She's good at metadata management. She can do MDM, and all the rest of it. And I've learned an awful lot from Donna, if you know what I mean, in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
understanding of the disciplines that I wasn't so strong at. Things like BI. I mean, I know what BI is, and I can talk about BI till the cows come home, but I'm no BI expert. So I must mention Donna. So if anybody's listening to this or watching this hasn't come across anything that Donna's put out there, I strongly recommend listening to her. She does, as part of the thing I did with her last night on the platform Dataversity. She does a whole series of what she calls data architecture sessions once a month, and they go back for 3 years. So, Donna will talk about everything to do with data management, everything from metadata management to modeling to BI and to analytics. So Don has certainly been an influence on me. And also I've been influenced a lot by the people I've got to know in DAMA. So, if you take somebody like Nicola Ascombe, who is well known in the UK as the data governance coach, I think she calls herself. See, that's my
Mhm.
problem. I've never got a fancy nickname. I ought to get one. I ought to get one, really. I've been called certain things, but I wouldn't want to repeat them. But Nicola, for example, has been promoting the value of data governance now for many
Yes.
years, and she's a good friend of mine. And we're rivals, yes, we're competitors in some cases, but she's always worth a listen to. She's done a lot of good videos and a lot of good podcasts and things like that as well. And I suppose on the technical side, it's really mainly from Europeans, I think, because I go to more conferences in Europe, and people like, I'm sure, Mike Ferguson, and of course over in Holland you've got Rick van der Lands and people like that, and they really help me to keep up with modern trends. Mike is always at the forefront, and Rick, of what's happening around data meshes and data fabrics and all this sort of
Mhm.
stuff. I remember Mike talking about data catalogs 2 years ago, and I'd never heard of them, to be honest, because they were quite a new concept then. So I always found that, listening to those guys as well is really worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, well, these people, I was fortunate enough to finally meet them in person as well over the years. So I'm following exactly that you say you can pick up a lot of what they're doing, either on the technical level, the governance level, and so on and so forth. One of my other passions is really music. I've been DJing all my life, and it still fascinates me on how you can move the crowd, energize the people. And what I see most of the time, if I'm going to concerts or festivals, music unites us exactly like data. So, do you have any favorite band or favorite music style, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm very fond of music. I've got two guitars at home, both of which I play really badly, Eve. So I wouldn't dare do anything in public, but it is great fun to plug an electric guitar in at the end of a stressful day and just bang out a few very loud chords. It's great fun. But yeah, I've loved music ever since I was a kid, and you can see my age. I mean, I'm old enough to have seen people like Bob Marley and the Wailers live. So I might be old, but I saw all the best bands, as the phrase goes. And I guess, yeah, of all the bands, I like lots of musicians. I suppose I got three key favorites. I think the greatest band of all time were the Beatles. Not a very surprising choice, but I think as
Mhm.
songwriters, they were geniuses. No question about that. That's the British band. I think an American band who are also one of my great all-time favorites is the wonderful Steely Dan.
Oh,
uh, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. Walter Becker sadly died a couple of years ago. And if you've not heard Steely Dan, please listen to them. Because although their music was produced in the 1970s and 1980s, most of it, it doesn't sound dated at all. They've got a unique style, which is just sounds so cool even today. And if they were producing an album like Asia today, Asia, it would sound as good today as it did then. I promise you. And my other great favorite as well, in a slightly different way, is the Canadian Joni Mitchell. And, I think, again, genius songwriter, great performer. So I like
yeah.
I like the old stuff. Eve. I do try and listen to the new stuff, I promise. And I do like some new bands. I've been listening recently to a band called Gabriels, who are from Los Angeles, and they appeared in the
Oh, yeah.
Glasgow Festival, and they're well worth a listen. They're a bit retro, but a bit modern as well. And they've got an
Yeah, I heard about them.
incredible lead singer, who's one of the best singers I've ever seen. So yeah, there are good,
Yeah.
good new bands around as well, but I'm not quite as up to date as I should be. Too busy working on data.
So, Nigel, it has been very nice talking to you, catching up, being inspired again on data management, and understand why I love data so much myself, and how we can help companies
Yep.
become better with their data and get the value out of that. How can people find you? Where can they find you online or reach out to you if they have a data problem?
Okay, well, basically, I think a good first point would be to go to our website, which is, if I can remember it, www.globaldatastrategy, one word, .com, C-O-M. And if you go on the website there, there's a sort of contact us. Alternatively, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you just look up, I think it's Nigel Turner Data Man or something corny like that. But you probably recognize me from my picture on LinkedIn. It was taken a few years ago, so I had slightly browner hair, but hopefully I haven't changed too much over. So either contact us through LinkedIn, or if they want to, they can email me direct. I'm more than happy to tell you my email address is Nigel, very simple, Nigel.Turner, Turner, at globaldatastrategy.com. To any one of those methods, we'd be pleased to hear from anybody who we think we can help.
Great one. Nigel, thanks and have a very nice day.
Yeah, you too, Eve, and it's a pleasure to meet you again and talk to you again. Hopefully see you in Utrecht next year. You never know.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.